Isn't it amazing what can happen in a relationship when one person sees another person in an entirely new light? Being with my wife during childbirth was such an experience for me. I saw in her a strength and courage I'd never realized was there, and it was awesome for me. We were carried to a new level in our bond with each other through that experience. I saw her in a new light. I had a friend who meant very much to me and my family. We were always very close, like brothers, for over 12 years when something happened that estranged us. It was actually very minor and petty as I reflect on it. For months we didn't speak. We avoided occasions where we knew we might be thrown together. And then a time came when we were both involved in an event from which neither of us could escape gracefully. He was experiencing a serious problem with his back. And as he was walking just ahead of me in procession, I saw him enter the door of the church. And as he did, he took hold of the person next to him who was walking beside him to steady himself as the pain shot through his body. My stone-cold heart melted, and I felt enormous compassion for my friend. The next day I called him and we met for lunch. We never again talked about the events which came so near to damaging our friendship beyond repair. He died a few years ago and we miss him. But we were friends for 40 years, largely because my eyes were opened to see him in a new light. A young man was assessed a rather stiff penalty after his third DWI offense. He tried to escape the consequences as he had tried to escape the fact that he's an alcoholic. In the process, someone very close to him recognized what was happening and confronted him at the risk of the relationship. It was the most loving thing to do. She saw her friend in a new light. And because she did, she was able to help him see and accept the truth about himself. He decided to remove alcohol from the position of supreme commander of his life. Peter and James and John were the inner circle of disciples. They probably knew Jesus better than any of the other disciples. Perhaps that's why he took them with him that day when he went up the holy mountain. He knew they still didn't know him well enough. When they looked at him, they saw the shining glory of God enveloping him, and they witnessed and recognized somehow Moses, the great lawgiver, and Elijah, the great prophet, standing beside him. Suddenly they realized something about Jesus they hadn't understood before. Both the law and the testimony of the prophets pointed to the Messiah of God, and Jesus, their rabbi and friend, is that Messiah. Peter, always the expressive one, offered to set up camp so they could preserve the moment. He was so impressed with this scene that he wanted to stay on that mountaintop forever. But he was interrupted by a shining cloud. The glory of God descended on the scene, and they heard a voice which could only be the very voice of the Holy One of Israel say, "This is my beloved Son. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." They were terrified. They fell on their faces. And then an interesting thing happened. Jesus came and touched them. "Get up," he said. "Don't be afraid." So they looked up, and no one was there but Jesus. Now, up until this point, others had always come to Jesus, and they gathered around Jesus to hear him teach. But now, on this mountaintop, Jesus came to them. He touched them, and he reassured them, and he ministered to them, although we know they still didn't completely understand all the implications. We know they looked at Jesus in a different way from this point on. They would never be the same. Their relationship with him would never be the same. It was taken to a new level because they saw him in a new light. And this light is the light of God's glory. How did they know that? Well, once you've experienced it, there's just no doubt about it. As Pascal said, the heart has reasons which reason cannot know. Anytime we see in a new light, something within us changes. If your eyes and heart are open today, you too will see the glory of God. Through word and sacrament, that light will be shined upon Jesus, and you will know him in a new way, a fuller way than you've ever known him before. Your relationship with the Messiah will be carried to a new level. And because of that, you will have a better understanding of yourself, your deepest needs, your infinite worth as he looks at you. You will have a new vision of what he would like to accomplish through the relationship he has with you. And you will see someone else in a new light as well. Maybe it's your spouse or your child or your parents or your peer or even perhaps your enemy. Healing and growth will begin in that relationship, in that new light. You will see clearly now the steps you want to take, you need to take in order to make things better. As you come to this table, simple things like bread and wine become charged with a power not theirs to give. You may feel awe or even terror as you experience this mystery in which Jesus comes to you, touches you, and says, "Get up, don't be afraid." All the time you thought you were coming to him, but now you see that he is coming to you. It is a real mountaintop experience for you. They came down their mountain that day, and Jesus ordered them not to tell anyone about the vision they had seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. We, having seen Jesus illumined by the new light of God's glory, are under no such restrictions. He's already risen, and we don't have to keep our vision a secret. Following that dramatic moment, Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem. The sacrifice of his life awaited him there beyond the valley of the shadow of death. I believe he was able to bear his cross, and the disciples did not completely fall away, in part because on the mountaintop they experienced God's confirmation. Peter even wrote about it. They would never forget that experience. It would give them courage and confidence and poise when the forces of hell itself pressed in upon them, and ultimately they would remain faithful to the end. If they had not, the message would never have been told, and you and I would not be passing it on to others. So you see, we need those mountaintop experiences. We need those times when we're allowed to see things in a new light, and they stay with us, so that even in the darkest hours, we will be able to stand firm and express faith instead of despair. Ralph Sockman was for many years the pastor of Christ Church United Methodist in New York City. He wrote a weekly syndicated column which was carried widely across the United States. In one of those columns, he told of coming home on his horse after dark one night. He said, "When I reached a stream, my horse stopped and refused to cross, refused to enter the water. It was dark, and he couldn't see the other side. Just then, a farmer at a house not far beyond the stream opened the door, and there was a beam of light. When he saw it, my horse immediately entered the water and crossed the stream as if it were daylight." We are standing at such a dark crossing in so many areas of life today. Sometimes we can't see light on the other side, but there is a light just beyond. It is the light of God's presence and glory. We are called upon to look for it, and when we see it, to let it guide us and change us and transfigure us. Amen.